Welcome back to the Automation Podcast. My name is Shawn, and this week on the show, I interviewed Dave Griffith, who is the co-host of the Manufacturing Hub Show. Dave, thanks for coming on the Automation Podcast. It is a great pleasure to have you on the show. I really appreciate it. We've been, for the audience, we've been sending messages back and forth and kind of talking on LinkedIn for years. But, I've been on this mission to reach out to other people who have shows and podcasts in the industrial automation space to give my audience, since I'm only doing one every week, to give my audience other options to listen to during the week, because most people have 10 trips in the car a week to get back and forth to work. So I thought we would start with, you just introducing yourself to the audience, kind of giving some of your background, your experience in industrial automation, and then go right into your show and talk about that. I think you're on episode 90, and so that's a lot of shows and a lot of content people have access to. So with that said, I'm just going to turn it right over to you.
Absolutely, Shawn. I appreciate it. I'm super happy to be on here. And I want to say to all of your listeners, please don't let Shawn sell himself short. Only one show a week. For everyone who doesn't do this on a semi-professional style of basis, no one understands the amount of preparation work or any of that it takes to get in there. So please do not sell yourself short on only one show a week. If we tried to do more than one show a week, either I would just self-combust, or my wife would kill me because she's so tired of me hearing me talk about all of this. But yes, everyone, if you don't know me, my name is Dave Griffith. Professionally, I run a company called Kaplan Solutions. We help companies go through what I call sensible digital transformation. And the goal is to help pick projects that are profitable and generally pay for themselves as we go through the upgrade, as we go through the process. As we go through that process. Happy to talk about that a little bit more if you guys are interested. I would say my automation journey, the automation journey that has led kind of me to co-create Manufacturing Hub with my co-host Vlad, has been twisted, as I think just about everyone who is in automation and manufacturing. I think that's very similar to most folks' backgrounds. I have done everything from being the person kind of hands-on, working in those warehouses, working in those facilities, saying, hey, wouldn't it be interesting if we could go apply some technology to going and slapping QR codes on boxes, being able to go read those, and was like, wow, this is really good. I spent some time working for a large OEM in the aerospace industry, so got a lot of hands-on opportunities to go work with kind of all of the aviation companies, so the Boeings, the Airbuses, the Gulfstreams, all of those. Which was very interesting when I went down there, and then kind of on the other side work with a whole bunch of machine shops in order to help create a supply chain in the U.S. as the company was a German company. Most of the last 10 or so years of my life, I worked for a distributor manufacturer's rep in the Mid-Atlantic. I went to help rebuild what their supply chain looked like. And then I spent a year or year and a half as an applications manager, mostly on the process side and on the process automation, process controls, and steam side, which was very interesting. It was different than my kind of normal, typical background. After that, I wanted to get into this kind of the digital stuff, right? Understand how everything is put together. So I spent about 3 years running an integrator. We focused mostly on the data space. So the MES, the manufacturing execution systems, how we take kind of PLC data, push it up to, we'll call it a SCADA level, and then visualize that data. And my goal had always been, how can we help organizations make kind of actionable, quick results? And so spent 3 years working with everyone from what I call kind of like mom and pop automation, so that the tens of millions of dollars a year, all the way up to the Fortune 50. And I guess kind of what led me to Kaplan, the company that I'm currently running, is the fact that I've seen, lots of multi-million-dollar projects fail. And most of the time it's not on that technical side, right? So on the technical side, we could put code that absolutely hits the requirements. Sometimes we miss on the requirements. Sometimes we don't talk to the right people. And then a lot of time I see kind of training and handover and how we actually use it, kind of the execution of the systems. And again, ironic, right? Manufacturing execution systems, we fail on the execution side. I find that there was a big gap. So I've spent the last 3 years running Kaplan Solutions, and the goal is to focus on training, is to focus on execution, is to focus on how we can blend the operational side and the technology side into actually helping kind of at the end of the day, real humans who are just trying to do their job and to make their lives better. And I have generally found if we help organizations make their life, if we help organizations help their people make their life better, we're generally going to run more profitably, which is kind of a win-win-win all the way around.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so important. Everything has to be a win-win-win, and all parties have to get something positive and good out of it. And that's so important. I've been involved in quite a few in my days as a when I graduated from being an automation specialist, then to a PLC specialist,
Mm-hmm.
then to a kind of SCADA MES specialist,
Mm-hmm.
S95 and all that. I was involved in several MES executions, and I'll tell you, I have to agree with everything you just said. It is disappointing to see a
Mm-hmm.
project that should succeed fail, and it just it really hurts your heart. It's like this should have worked,
It does.
but
It
you can't
does.
always control everybody in the plant, and some people are just they don't want to change. But having said that, and I think that's a great segue into your show. So tell us all about what you guys are doing. I know you've got many episodes out there. Kind of what the
Yep.
goal, the origin story, and all that.
Absolutely. So every Wednesday, about I guess 50-ish Wednesdays a year, at about 4 o'clock East Coast time, I run a live show called Manufacturing Hub with my co-host Vlad Romanoff. Vlad and I, we will have passed episode 90 by the time this goes live, but we'll finish 90 episodes in the calendar year 2022. And the show kind of came about. It started 2019. For everyone listening, you guys remember what COVID was like, and especially all of the automation shows. And there was very few opportunities to go have conversations. And some of my best conversations I've had, some of the best friends and clients I have, are from kind of the breakfasts of, hey, we're all going to a show, we all go meet up. You like see the same look on people's faces. Like most everyone is dressed, in a similar fashion. You may have the name tag still hanging, and so you're talking to people, and you're like, hey, what do you do? Hey, this is what I do. And maybe you get to have those conversations for a couple of days, or maybe you go out to the bar or whatever in the evening, and you just get to have awesome conversations that are not the 5, 10, 20 minutes of just very pointed kind of question answer. It's like, hey, how did you get here? Very similar to, kind of our initial comment, Shawn, is, hey, how did you get here? Oh, that's interesting. Like, let me go ask you 5 minutes of questions about, that specific example. And so that was kind of the overview of the sort of conversations that we wanted to have. And we did about half a dozen of them. And honestly, they were great conversations. Vlad and I did a few in the beginning. And then around episode 6 or 7, we rolled into what we call themes. So for most of the last 85 or 90 episodes, we have a theme. So every month, every 4 weeks, we pick a theme. One of our first was manufacturing intelligence. We actually just completed a theme kind of talking about all about SCADA. And with that, we have 4 conversations with 4 different people, and our goal is to kind of bring a well-rounded conversation. So ideally, we've got 3 or 4 different companies or OEMs represented. Lots of times we'll bring on systems integrators. I'll be very candid and tell you guys, we do our very best to bring on end users. If anyone has ever tried to tape a live show or write a case study with an end user, you know that it's very difficult sometimes to bring end users on for a bunch of legal and other reasons. So we try our best to bring end users and other people on, and our goal is to bring kind of well-rounded conversations. Our goal is to bring kind of well-rounded conversations when it comes to that. And on it, and as I joke with everyone, Shawn, we're like, yeah, let's do this. And we thought we'd do it once a month. And we spent 3 months going and preparing what the first one was going to look like. We did a couple, and we're like, wow, this is fun. Let's do it more often. And so I think we agreed to every other week. And I don't necessarily remember where maybe we'll do it a couple of times, turned into, yes, let's go do it every week, turned into, we'll go do themes. And so we're going to commit to every Wednesday afternoon. But my Wednesday afternoon has been fairly well committed for the last nearly 2 years at this point. And I like to say it is the most fun, generally 2 hours of conversation kind of during the pre-show, and the post show that I get to have, and we get to ask, super selfish questions. And it's like, hey, why did you do this? What does your career look like? At the end, we always ask people for career advice, and we like to have fun and ask people to predict the future and things like that. And people keep listening, and we are super happy that people keep listening. I will go and shout out, if you guys would love to listen, we would love to kind of have you guys live on our live shows on every Wednesday. We do our very best to kind of bring in as much interaction as possible. So depending upon how the show is going, we try to bring in a question or a couple of questions, either from the LinkedIn Live or from the YouTube or one of those. And we just have fun with it. That is kind of the number one goal. Currently, you're not going to go see kind of any tutorials or like very specific how-tos. It's more kind of general conversations to understand what applications look like, be it a SCADA or be it a cybersecurity, or let's go talk about an introductory to IIoT. Kind of any and all of those conversations are the conversations that we are trying to have.
I want to ask you a question, and I got a couple questions for you. Now, the first one's kind of on a personal level. On our 100th episode, I brought in 5 vendors to talk about the future of automation, and they were very, very smart, but very even keel, level-headed. And I'm kind of like a futurist. I love reading sci-fi. I love sci-fi movies. I'm like, geez, that sounded like next year, not 10 years from now. So have you had any surprising answers to your question about what people think's coming in the future? Before we get to that, I have a special announcement. I've just released my very first book. It's an ebook, and it's entitled Logic's Book of Knowledge. What I did is I combined all my Control Logix articles from the last 10 years into an ebook. I updated them, I added new pictures, and I made it all available for just $9.99. So if you appreciate what I'm doing, if you want to support the show and the channel and the blog, then please check out my brand new ebook, Logic's Book of Knowledge, which you can get over at theautomationblog.com/BOK1.
So absolutely, absolutely, yes. So let me give you some examples. So most of the time, like I guess we prepare everyone so they know what's going to happen, and I feel like you have to prepare people to know what's going to happen. So none of, especially the closing questions or topics, are of complete and utter surprise to people. We found that if we just surprise people with questions, you don't really know where their answers are going to be, including like 20 minutes of just what did this person ask me while I'm live on the internet. So that there is like some minimal amount of preparedness. And so we tell everyone about the future. We've had a couple of people like very worried about like the future that we ask them to predict. We've had some really good ones. So we had Robert Tiffany who came on. He's an IoT guy. He predicted this super interesting thing where we basically have fleets of IoT technicians, like we've got fleets of plumbers and everyone else. Because if we're going to go take IoT into like agriculture, for instance, right? And like, let's say we only put one sensor per acre. Like if we've got 1,000, and a sensor takes an hour, right? So if we've got 1,000 acres or 10,000 acres or 100,000 acres, those are huge amounts of time that it takes, not just to install whatever and to install the sensor, but then we've got to move to the next one and do that. And no one has 1,000 hours, personally to go get in the truck and just drive around. So he kind of predicted we're just going to have fleets of this. And so that was like very, very futurist, right? I would also say that if you want to listen to some really downers, we did cybersecurity in the month of October. So like mid 80s, or early to mid 80s, maybe 81, 82, 83, or 2, 3, 4, something along there. And we had Pascal Ackerman come on, and Pascal's a good friend of mine, does a lot in ICS cybersecurity, has written a couple of really great books that I joke with him, Pascal, I'm not sure if they're books or weapons because they're like 1,000 pages thick. So I asked him what the future looked like, and that was a really bleak answer, right? Like the future, if you ask ICS or cybersecurity folks in general, like there is a lot of ransomware, and it's not looking good for the home team, which would be like the rest of the world that is not, black hats and hackers and things like that. And I'm like, wow, Pascal, that's really a downer. So we went on to the next episode where we talked about offensive cybersecurity. And that was basically the entire, what does the future look like for cybersecurity people, looked exceptionally bleak. So Again, like we prepared them. Like most of the time, they don't know what they don't know what that looks like. But no, future absolutely very interesting. We did some cybersecurity episodes, I think, in February of 2022 as well. And it was actually funny. So one of the questions we ask is for career advice, right? Not necessarily for us, but like for our listeners, like if you're early mid-career, if you're looking to make a transition. And I laugh because every single one, we went 4 for 4 that month, which basically every single ICS cybersecurity person said, hey, if you want to get into cybersecurity, you just say yes to a whole bunch of stuff and you figure it out. And that's basically how everyone in cybersecurity in that point had kind of gotten there. Is you said yes, you figured it out, and you kind of built your skill levels from there. And I laughed because, again, 4 for 4 with all of those people. It's like, go say yes, go figure it out on there. I don't know if I guess that is very similar to what I did in my career, which is absolutely outside the comfort zones of a whole bunch of people. But no, we like to have fun, especially on the future side. Most of them are fairly in line. Most of them are fairly in line with maybe kind of similar to the vendors, right? Like we're not going to go super out there on any level. But we're going to give like a fairly good prediction. I generally try to ask, 5 years in advance if I'm putting a time frame on it.
Yeah. I also often wonder why, how long it's going to take industry to realize that. Well, let's look at remote work, right?
Mm-hmm.
We yeah, not to pick on anybody, but I have worked with companies that would make people drive 3 hours through snowstorms both ways to attend a 1-hour meeting, and it's like. There is something called a webcam built into their laptop. And of course, this is pre-COVID. It's like, can't they just attend virtually? You can see if they're there or sleeping because they'll be on a webcam. And so, we're kind of beyond that. But it's like, how long will it be until industry realizes that you can do remote work via drones, right? So
absolutely.
Underwater people who are doing underwater research, they know this.
Mm-hmm.
They use drones all the time for underwater research because of the depth. But like if you had 10,000 acres to maintain, why waste driving around when drones have 1080p or 4K cameras on them for $200, right? So
absolutely.
I keep waiting for that. I keep waiting for people to say, hey, we can actually visit all these places on the territory on the land via drone and do a lot of work. There's a lot of tools you can mount onto a drone, just like you do on a robot.
Absolutely. So I've been working remotely for the last 6 years. 6 years ago, it took a year in order to find a remote position that like I could actually be remote. So 6 years ago, it was really bad. At the beginning of COVID, I worked with a great company doing some consulting work, and they were very much in-person people, right? So they were moving engineers to where they wanted engineers to be. Like they look across the country, but you have to be in the office. And they had 3 or 4 offices. And so it was very interesting kind of watching the transition of some of those organizations go from, hey, we have to be in the office. I think since that point, they're more, we'll call it remote friendly. I know that there are engineers in a variety of different places and they can work from home. And there are a variety of places that they can work from home. I convinced a couple of those folks to actually go be nomadic, similar to what we've been doing for the last 6 years. And so it was really funny kind of watching it as they try to understand structurally how they are as an organization and like, can we let people work remotely? And it was very difficult for them pre-COVID, but post-COVID, the first like 3-4 months, they were much more remote friendly. Many of them still wanted to be in the same office, but we were using things like Teams and Zoom and all of that in order to kind of build up those chat and those channels. And there's certainly the benefit of you get the best people. You get the best people. I mean, working in manufacturing and automation, we're always going to have to go to site. I tried to spend as little time on site as I could for, 2 or 3 years. And I have found, especially this year in 2022, that it was important to like go and see people, go and see the process. I found some organizations work really well. Like some organizations I can go, we can set a plan, we can do our work remotely, and they're going to execute. I have found other organizations, even post-COVID, that basically if you are not on site, you don't exist. Like we answer emails to the people who are on site. We answer texts and phones to people on site, but like, I'm not going to go show up to the meetings. And so I find that it's very organizationally dependent. Dependent. I guess kind of one of my predictions is that in the software and the automation on the technical side, if organizations are unwilling to let you work remotely when you don't need to be on site, or remotely when you don't need to be on customer site or be together for a build or things like that, they're going to lose out on absolutely the best talent. And I have seen good talent, good engineers move to go to other locations, at least in part because they want the ability to go work from a friend's house for a couple of weeks up in the mountains, or they want the ability to go do something else while they're sitting in front of, or I guess for the rest of the time while they're not sitting in front of the computer. So I've already started to see that transition. It will be interesting to see if more manufacturing, more industrial organizations kind of pick up on that trend and offer remote work to allow to bring the best people, or if they're still going to plug along until the point that they don't have the correct people in order to continue to run their site.
I do want to ask you this.
Yep.
Out of all these shows you've done, and this is one question I did not prepare you for.
Okay.
Is there one that like sticks out, like one of the funner ones that you were like, wow, that I'll always remember that show because it was a really good time. And I know you probably have a dozen of them that are like that, but what comes to mind, like when I say that, like, can you think of an episode or a guest where you just really think like, wow, we had a lot of fun doing that show?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I'm going to come with like the very diplomatic. I think that we always have fun.
Sure.
Right. So I think that we always have fun when we do the shows. If I didn't think we were going to have fun, I would stop doing the shows. Right. And then that's what I tell everyone. And that they always continue to be fun. So I guess I'm going to go walk into the trap and have like, I don't know, 75 guests be very upset at me that I didn't go off for these. But let me go off of a couple that were let me go off a couple that were really great, kind of all for very different reasons. And you should have prepared me because I could have had episode numbers in here, but I will go. So mid-year we had Arlen Nipper, who is the CTO of Cirrus Link and the co-inventor of MQTT. And I've had a couple of conversations with him in the past. I've sat down and watched him do a demo where basically he pulls like 250,000 PLC tags from like nothing through MQTT into an Ignition database. And that was the first time I saw him do it. And it was one of those like life-altering moments. And then I kind of went and figured out all the things that he had to be really good at to do it. So a little bit more complicated than kind of snap your fingers and they're in there. But we just had a great conversation with him. We have great conversations with kind of lots of technologists like that. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had a great conversation with John Harrington. He is the co-founder and product manager of HighByte. And so HighByte, I've heard of them called like kind of like a UNS, a unified namespace service provider. We kind of had conversations how they could kind of pull data like all the way from the PLC or in theory sensor level, but basically how they kind of sit outside of a Purdue model or anything like that. And they go pull data from anything that has an API, anything that has a SQL database or a data stream, and they kind of go populate it out. They kind of dish it out to a whole bunch of different levels. And it was just really interesting to listen to kind of his path from Kepware all the way to what they created. And a lot of the times, again, I told people that we ask very selfish questions. And I feel like we tell guests this, that we ask very selfish questions. And so we just got to go into like have these questions. We just got to go in and ask a bunch of questions to all of our guests to understand their product, maybe in ways that I normally would not be able to go and understand. So I think that those two products are really great, and I'll throw out another one. So Benson Hoagland of Opto22, he was on at the very beginning of the year. We did kind of a history of industrial control systems theme, and he was absolutely better prepared than either Vlad or I was, right? So he was absolutely prepared, and he had slides and like the 20 or 30 years or more of his knowledge and all the opto knowledge and where they were in all these technological revolutions was amazing. Again, he was probably absolutely more prepared than Vlad or I was for that conversation. And then also this summer we had Jeff Nepper and Graham, whose last name I can't think of off the top of my head, from Canary and Flow, and we were talking about Analytics Hub and kind of talking about the future, like what do we imagine the modern enterprise architecture is going to look like in the future. And again, just great show. Yeah, great show. I'm gonna pause because I would probably rattle off 30 more shows, basically all of the rest of the shows in between. But like right off the top of my head, I'll say Jeff and Graham, it was a two-parter. It was the first time we did a two-parter. We like to do kind of different things, right?
Sure.
I am never afraid of doing something different. Vlad kind of tempers that. Vlad kind of helps temper that a little bit as we go planning all of these. So I'm always interested to like, let's go do a two-parter. Let's go kind of do a bunch of share screens. Let's go kind of do any and all of these things. So those kind of just off the top of my head, some really great conversations that we had. I will apologize in advance to the 10 other amazing shows that we have had very recently. I will apologize in advance for all of those. But in the last 12 months, I say that those are kind of pinnacles of some of the things that stick out.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, before I get to my next question, I wanted to make sure we tell the audience exactly where to find the show. So we know it's on Wednesdays. I believe you said, was it 4 p.m. Eastern or?
Yep. Eastern. So generally it's at 4:00 Eastern. Sometimes we'll change it around. So every once in a while, maybe twice a quarter, we get someone on who we need to change the time for a variety of reasons. Most of those are time zone issues. So Graham is from South Africa, so we had to go earlier because South African time zone and East Coast time zone, not very good. We had Phil Saboa of iControls. He is from Australia on 3-4 weeks ago. And that's another one of those. Like I'd love to do it at 4:00 East Coast time, but 4:00 East Coast time, like solidly puts him as he should be asleep or in the process of caffeinating. So most of the time, Wednesdays, 4:00, you can go find the LinkedIn Live on my LinkedIn channel. And you guys can go find kind of all of that information on manufacturinghub.live, which is our website. And we do our very best to get that updated weekly with guests. I will also say, if you want to listen to us on podcast form, we put out new podcasts every Thursday or just about every Thursday, 8 days after the live show. 8 days after the live show comes out, we come out on Thursdays, and you should generally be able to find us on all of your podcast platforms. So Apple, Spotify, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and most of the small podcasts. I'm a person, I listen on Overcast because I like to listen at 3x speed. And so we're on most of those smaller podcast applications as well. If you find a small podcast application that we're not on, please go ahead and send me a message, and I'll go click a couple of links and it'll go populate out all of our episodes for you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So now I always like to end these type of interviews with a question like, okay, we're done talking about manufacturing and automation. Let's, what do you do for fun? I always like to ask that question because, we are more than our job, right? And it's kind of cool to hear what other people's hobbies and fun things are. So what do you do for fun after work?
Yeah, so I guess I maybe prepared everyone a little bit, right? So we've been, my wife and I and our puppy, we've been nomads for the last 6 or so years, and we travel, right? So we have lived and been in, I don't know, like 47 states or thereabouts in the last 6 years, and most of the Canadian provinces. I joked with Shawn, we like to snowbird, so we like to go south where there's somewhere warm in the winter, and north where it's somewhere cooler in the summer. Most of the time for work, that's the flip-flop, right? I'm in negative 17 degrees in January, and I'm in 120 degrees in July. So at least we try to do that. And so we spend a lot of time out camping. We love national parks and kind of going and being outdoors. Most of the time, you'll catch me if I'm not working, or even if I am working and can get good cell phone reception, kind of out in the woods or up a mountain somewhere in the summertime, and out on the beach somewhere in the winter time. Last summer we spent the summer in Alaska, and so I got to do, I don't know, like 15 or 20 shows up in Alaska. Wow. Kind of all about all around, a little bit of everywhere, which is really good. But it's like 4,500 miles of drive back from Alaska back to Western New York, where we drove. And 4,500 miles is a very long drive. So we do a lot of long driving in and amongst a lot of kind of going and being out in nature and doing exploring along those lines.
Yeah, we just did a round trip to North Carolina. My son works for Epic, and my daughter runs her own company in North Carolina. And I love the Berkshires, right? We just got 8 inches of snow. We're supposed to get a foot of snow tonight. Love Appalachia, but my wife, she says it's too cold. So we're getting up there. We're getting up there. Not quite retirement age, but we're getting up there. We're grandparents, and so we're looking to move halfway down the Appalachian Trail. I'm actually looking at building some beautiful buildings to host the automation school. Actually, a physical version of the automation school, and I also want to have a studio to do like if you were in the area, right? We could have you come in and kind of do a sit down, kind of like a Dave Rubin or something like that, type of studio. So we're excited about that for 2023. Don't know if it'll happen. We have just so many life events going on, but if it's not 2023, it'll be 2024 or 2025. But the plan is set to leave the heavy snow area of the Berkshires, which I think is just beautiful. I mean, we're like Southern Vermont, or we're like the Adirondacks in New York. Mm-hmm. We're just hills or mountains, whatever you want to think of it, and just beautiful in the winter. But it is cold. We have months. We typically have a month where it doesn't crack freezing. So, and I'm sure and about that.
That is not. Yeah. So I think I told you, Shawn. My wife and I, we grew up in Western New York, and we kind of ran south 8 years ago. I also like to joke that we bring snow to a whole bunch of places that we're not supposed to have snow. Right. So for like a couple of Christmases in a row, it snowed on us in Florida, like near the Florida Panhandle. It's like 30 degrees and snowing. We brought like 8 feet. We brought like 4 or 5 feet of snow to the Carolina coast that hadn't had snow in 30 years. I was up in Wisconsin. Beth and Archie were out in Death Valley for a couple of weeks while I was working in like January, February. It's Death Valley. It's supposed to be the warmest place in the world. It snowed on them in the middle of Death Valley. So we bring snow to lots of places that should not have snow.
All right. So if I do invite you to my new studio, it'll have to be around. It'll have to be around the holidays, because that's the only time I'd want snow down south.
Absolutely. No. If we come, you would absolutely want it to be far outside of normal snow time. So generally in the spring through fall, we're good. But just in those like 3 or 4 months surrounding what should be winter, that is generally when we bring snow to places that should not have snow.
Yeah, my wife's a principal, so they're all excited. They get a snow day tomorrow. I'm excited because it's going to look good. We put a snow plower in the budget, so I don't have to spend 2 hours out there anymore with the snowblower. So it's like, bring it, because I'm not driving 8 hours a day anymore visiting industrial plants. My longest walk is to the studio in the garage. So, but now, so we kind of covered a lot of ground. Was there anything else we wanted to cover before we end the show today?
No, Shawn, I think we hit it really well. I would say absolutely, please come check us out. If you guys are interested in having conversations about manufacturing, please come out. Please come check Manufacturing Hub. We try to have as kind of well-rounded conversations as we possibly can. We, as I'm sure Shawn does, like especially on our live shows, we love kind of like live interactions. We do our best to bring those questions in, and we do it as well as we possibly can. Many times we're just way inundated with questions, and we always do our best to kind of get back to answer those questions as is always possible. And then I would say that if you guys are interested in the sensible digital transformation, I'm doing some stuff kind of along what I call profit by design, which is basically at its core is, how can I help manufacturing industrial organizations run better and run more profitably? And so that is going to be a big push of what I'm doing in 2023. So if you guys think that that's interesting, please go ahead and check out myself. Let's go have a conversation. I always love to have these conversations, kind of expand my knowledge. And if I can help people out in real life manufacturing locations, I am always happy to do that as well.
Yeah, and if you're a road warrior like I used to be, visiting different sites every day, don't discount the fact that he does make these shows available on audio on the podcast services. So if you can't catch the live, I know I would always try to schedule my trips to be able to hear different things because it
Yeah.
just makes the drive go faster. So, but if you can't, he is available on audio as well. So, Dave, I want to thank you again for coming on the Automation Podcast and introducing yourself and your show and your company to our audience. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shawn. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I look forward to seeing everyone in the virtual world.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. And I want to thank Dave for taking time out of his busy schedule to come on the show and chat about his career and talk about his Manufacturing Hub show. Now, if you did enjoy this episode, please consider giving us a like and a sub. And if you're listening to the audio-only edition, please consider giving us a 5-star review. It really helps us grow our audience and find new vendors to come on the show. You'll also be able to follow me and get in touch with me over at automation.locals.com. And all of my PLC, HMI, and SCADA training courses are at theautomationschool.com. With that said, I want to wish you all a very happy, safe, and healthy week. And until next time, my friends, peace.